Good morning, everybody.
Okay, we've got some numbers coming in there. So,
We'll just wait till
and once again, thanks for joining us this morning. And we're going to be talking about a subject which is of real interest and urgency right now, as we'll hear, on the area of the Building Safety Act and its implementation. And what
right, so while everybody's still getting loaded in, I'll just make the introductions. Good morning, my name is Brendan Garrity. I'm the Chief Executive of the UKAA. We represent the build-to-rent industry here in the UK, and of course, we are very, very concerned to provide useful and practical information and strategies for our membership and indeed the industry more broadly. And in many ways, nothing can be more pressing at the moment than the Building Safety Act and its implications on our industry, which are profound. This is part two of a three-part series. The first one was held a week or two ago on preparing for the Building Safety Act. That'll be available on our website as part of the best practice guide. And today we are looking at resident engagement and the how-to and the implications of that. And of course, we'll be finishing this three-part series at our conference on the 2nd of November. Tickets are available now, where we will have the regulator speaking at conference on the Building Safety Act. So a really amazingly valuable series. And of course, I'm joined on the series as always by ARC. David Hills, who you'll know from the previous presentation, and this morning Jodie Wilson.
How the implementation of the Act is currently going.
Without any further ado, I will hand over. We'll have a Q&A session towards the end. We think about 10 or 15 minutes towards the end. Please put your questions in the chat, and I will adjudicate that towards the end of the session.
The various
so thank you very much from me, and over to you,
today
David.
I just want to take you through a brief introduction. I'm just going to share my talk about registration and key building information. I then want to move on to the other key areas that are going to be very, very important after the end of this month. Right. And that's all about making sure to assess the risks very much, Brendan. Great to be working with the UKAA making sure that we consider safety management systems. Most of you know me, so my name is David Hills. Safety case and safety case report. I am resident director here at ARC. And then and joining me this time, so you won't be listening to my dulcet tones. So that's the aim of today's will be Jodie Wilson. She's principal consultant at ARC. I think it's very important spent over 20 years. So we are no longer in the industry of working with engagement. Say that starting off we've been talking about building safety and then moving on to roles overseeing for many years now and tenant engagement. Most of it has Jodie's been working with the regulator. We have seen trying to help them in the last what best practice in the last month, for example, and what a good resident engagement strategy would also look like and contain Safety Act. And whilst Jodie would not say too much about this, Jodie was already nominated this month as the Women in Social Housing Professional of the Year award. So I think it's very important we understand improving engagement. This is not theory. So what are we going to be covering today? First things first, it is a quick introduction to the Act at the moment, because yesterday, resident 19th of September, the government actually issued. Jodie's then going to take you through what resident engagement looks like in what's documented. Successful resident engagement looks like accountable persons. It's then all about looking at some of the pitfalls, how they can be stopped falling into the Resident Engagement Safety Act. And so what I've tried to do today is look at 5 dysfunctions of resident engagement, all of those areas. We're then going to look at the government have raised a position of how we can make resident engagement so easy, or building safety easier. Jodie's then going to take you through. We've got a new regime, and that new regime effectively and at the end, once we've gone through the number part of we're very happy to work that needs to be undertaken from you. We believe there's around about 35 elements. One of the most important things we need to understand is that the Act is in place. New builds, and not all of these can be applicable to in-occupation. So we are not today. We are no longer in-occupation side purely on the basis this is where the current guidance has in a position where. So we now need to start focus on some of the key areas and at least having our resident engagement. First areas I want to talk about. The fire at Grenfell Tower shattered the lives from countless February last year in a place which they needed to have feel safe. Rethink the way that we undertook, and despite years of decline, in fact, the legislation numbers of incidents and fires in residential commencement orders, that tragedy has meant that we've got to relook at our risk assessment process, occupiers' confidence. And in addition to that, in the UK's building safety system. So today we're going to focus on one of the more important walls and in fact the risk assessment process elements, as I said, of the building safety regime, i.e. giving residents from January this year we had a whole host of new so what you're going to hear is all about the fire safety resident regulations is not just really about communication. Responsible person. The clue is in the title. Undertaking it's about key checks, key inspections. So our aim today then is to providing information both and show you what success would look like regarding engagement, services, but also bring. And then of course we've got the remainder of the act. Which is coming into force. Often resident engagement in various stages. Just putting together some sort of this year statement of intent to register really fully understanding the implications buildings that are over 18 meters or determining the goals that contain. Therefore, we're looking to try and demystify units, this resident engagement process. Look at how it following that to actually provide share some valuable insights and take you through from then onwards. From October, we've now got some clear guidance on what the government sits behind and the reason why we've got such as this within the law report, the safety management system. We all know that the residents engagement is a pretty damning view, and I'm going to go through those building construction and then from April next year, at least finding that as an industry at the moment, we are considered to be a need for organisations to start regulations and guidance were not always read by those who needed to read direction from the regulators. Those regulations and guidance was either misunderstood 12th of April, the registration process Judith also suggested, and this is the worrying registration process, and not nice to hear, let's be honest, that actually 12 o'clock that we were in 30th of September. It seems that the primary motivation at that time was to do things quickly, to do things cheaply, occupy a building without and when concerns were raised, actually, do you know what? They were most often ignored. And from the 1st of October, you need to make sure not prioritise safety, develop and have in place what she felt we had not prioritised safety. And the reason why you need the ambiguity of regulations is because for some of those buildings, the building assessment certification process as a sector is going to thrive on a lack of clarity of roles and responsibilities of April, suggesting actually there was ambiguity. Now, that date is not been set where responsibility actually the regulator is currently using, exacerbated by the level of fragmentation. We want to make sure that everyone is aware of that. In fact, certainly found that the date of the were raised end of registration has set in stone, and the date ignored. As I said, the elements, and again, the voices are very clearly highlighted within both legislation even and when the guidance safety issues were identified. So, let's go back and focus on developing her recommendations and basically which have now found their way completely into other risk assessments, Building Safety Act. She found that residents have reported to her of the Building Safety Act and frustrated new guidance that they call intermittent or partial information you need on safety matters. Assess and in addition to that, have a residents' understanding that they were risks inadequately with both consulted on and structural failure. The building or on safety matters. We're still hearing a lot of organisations and there was a need across the whole industry, fire only, and not looking at construction as well. Management is really for greater transparency of information, but also building safety that the and consultation and involvement in the decision-making process. More areas that will need to be covered. So her specific recommendation, so the first thing that we would certainly recommend that you start looking at is making sure that you're covering all of the duty hazards, i.e. the accountable or principal accountable persons, to have an engagement strategy as suggested, and to have that in place to support the principles of tenants devised areas and sharing of information with residents. So the traditional strategy should have a statutory really needs to be requirement type 3 fire risk outline how and the duty holder assessment the AP and the PAC, for example, all of the will share that information with residents, existing risks, how they will inform those residents as well as any additional controls that you have, and how they can involve residents in the decision-making process. And you should not just so what did we actually get? What we call the substantive risk. Under Regulation 91, there is a requirement now for within your fire risk assessment anyway, was the need for a principal accountable person, substantive risk to and the other as soon as reasonably practicable. I think it's really important that we don't the relevant time, and the relevant time is once the building is occupied. Understand that we should be identifying all of the fire and structural equipment into play and risks that are in place. Prepare a strategy, and that we should be identifying all of the management arrangements and who is involved, the relevant in persons, all of these relevant persons being And finally, we need to be considering what could go wrong, or not just details of the individual apartments, therefore what control measures building safety decisions. We therefore and they define building safety decisions available as relating to whoever's going to be writing your safety case report. Because in addition to risk assessments, both structural and fire, review that strategy at prescribed times, and or needs to be included. Last month we had new legislation that came out which prescribed that. So minimum period only take away now every 2 years. We need to be reviewing and then revise it if they consider it necessary or appropriate to start thinking about. So, for example, after a mandatory occurrence, whether that's a structural or after a change in the building, then again, or a structural assessment, or that's a decision that you will need to make to actually review, depending upon the age and complexity of your building. And then in prescribed circumstances, which something that is again very clearly some background of importance at this particular moment is registration and other prescribed. We know that such as the regulator and other enforcing agencies spending a lot of time on the registering their buildings and take their representation into account providing key when you are next reviewing the strategy. The registration portal has been open since April. We are seeing a significant element in the number of people who are registering, which basically says buildings at the moment. You have got and we've got to make sure that we've got just the building name, addresses, and so I'm now going to hand over to my colleague, summary of the building, just basically the height of the building, number of leading expert on resident engagement, and details of the year of construction. And she's going to take as well as the name and contact details of both how we can overcome the pitfalls and all of how you can make hopefully engagement. You will have to pay a fee, and as I said, you need to have this completed by 12 o'clock on the 30th.
So as David mentioned briefly earlier, engagement and communication are two different concepts.
That is not actually correct.
So if communication refers to the act of sharing
information, and
engagement is about building relationships and fostering active participation.
After that date.
Communication is necessary for engagement to occur, but it's not sufficient on its own.
After the 1st of October, then you've got
ongoing dialogue and
obtain a completion certificate or
always
final
be highly
notice,
encouraged.
and then
you must develop a two-way relationship
with the regulator
in order for engagement to be effective and successful.
Then you need to provide what
knowing who lives in your blocks is essential,
and that needs to be supplied and uploaded within 28 days of registration.
Understand that this may
according
not
to the
be
regulations,
easy, especially in blocks
with
it's
not just about providing information,
but they do expect you to ensure that the owner of those properties is equipped with information to pass on to their tenants.
The number of floors,
and so understanding your resident demographics will help you create
the date of
bespoke
completion,
strategies
as well as any changes to the building since it's been completed.
And to understand the demographics,
details of the structure of the building, such as substructure, the superstructure, and the exterior
what is
wall.
The household composition?
Detailing information, for example, about the percentages
young professionals?
the different types
individuals?
of exterior cladding that you have, as well as the types
do they have any
and
additional
percentages of the
accessibility
insulation.
needs? And do you need to use
that,
different
you need to be
languages?
looking
Now,
at all
this
of
isn't
the
only in
fire
the
and
written
structural
expression, but can also cover
number of lifts,
developmental needs
the number
or
of
cultural
firefighting
needs.
lifts, for example, the
And
types
in the
of
build to rent
protection that
world,
you have,
these
where they're
demographics are likely to
what type
change
of
more
smoke control
frequently
systems
than
you've
others.
got,
And your
and very
strategies may need to be
importantly, the
reviewed
number
on a
and
more
type
regular
and
basis to
designation
accommodate
of the
these
fire
changes.
doors. And finally, the key building information is all about providing
Successful
energy
engagement
supply,
must be bespoke to the
utility
people that live in your building, the building itself,
key building
and the wider
information and
community.
registration
And by
is
wider
very,
community,
very
we mean
important. But it
visitors,
doesn't stop
staff,
there.
and contractors.
In order to implement the Act,
the strategy
and
must
as
be built upon the
suggested
needs and
within the
requirements
guidance
of the
that was
residents.
issued yesterday,
And the only way
from
you
the
can do
1st
this
of
is by
October,
ensuring
you must
they have
and you need
active
to develop
involvement and
and
input in
implement
developing
a building
the strategy.
safety management system.
You need to
That building
understand what
safety
it is your
management
residents
system
want to be engaged
is ultimately
about.
down
Whilst
to
under
the
the new
accountable
regulations,
persons
you are
and the
required to
principal
provide
accountable
certain
persons
information
as well.
to all residents.
So basically, the
there are some building
legislation
safety
says
matters
and
that
states that
will
the
not be as
accountable
important
person
to your
must
residents.
make and give effect
This
to the
will vary
arrangements for the
block by
purpose
block.
of ensuring the effective planning, organisation, control,
So
monitoring
if you
and
ask your
review of the
residents
steps
how they
taken.
wish to be engaged with,
And that building
by asking them,
safety
you're
management
ensuring that the
system
relationship
is an
starts off on the
essential
right
element
foot.
of your safety
Ensure your
case
engagement
report.
is as
And
accessible
as the regulator
as reasonably
stated
practical.
yesterday, it's very
And it's
clear
also
that
important to
whilst
ask
you
your
could have
residents
a
what
system
doesn't
that, for
work,
example,
and
is
make sure that you take
based
this
on
into
ISO
consideration as well.
45001 or
Effective
BS
engagement happens at
9997,
different levels
that
for
actually
different people. And it
and
will be
those
dependent
may
on the
not
level of
cover
engagement that they
all
feel
of the
comfortable
building
committing
safety
to.
management requirements. It may not.
So a common question that I get asked is, how can I demonstrate that we're engaging with residents when the majority of them just don't seem to want to be involved?
There are a specific requirements.
Engagement is about identifying and providing opportunities for tenants to get involved at a level and a stage that they're comfortable with.
Plan, do,
and this will differ greatly household to household.
The deeming circle.
We need to accept that
it's a
not all
really
residents
simple
want to
system
actively
to use.
participate.
It's based upon
but we must be able to demonstrate that we have given
model,
them every
and
opportunity
it's certainly one
to
that
take
is
part.
easy to follow.
And engagement
by
isn't
the
just
way,
about
ISO
tenant focus groups
45001
or
and
scrutiny
BS
panels or in-person
9997
consultations.
follow that.
But we need to be
approach.
more expansive in our conception of resident engagement.
So the building safety management system needs to, be able to show how you are going to organise and manage the individual building safety risks.
So level number one, being made aware.
And
all of your tenants should be aware of you and be aware of the opportunities to communicate and engage with you. They might not want to get involved, but there are opportunities for them to get involved, and they're available to them at all times.
You put in place.
Level 2 we call opting in.
So as I said
earlier,
this
is where you'll see residents responding to surveys and participating in some form of contact.
Policy,
the information gathered at
how
this
you can
stage
organise yourself,
can be used to demonstrate to the regulator that you are actively seeking resident views
got the right
and giving them an opportunity to shape services.
That you put the appropriate controls in place and the monitoring arrangements so
residents
you can check to make sure that what you're doing is meeting the requirements,
consultations,
and that you therefore undertake a regular
review
of your activities to ensure that you can
and again, this should be taken into consideration when making decisions.
The guidance that was issued yesterday.
Level 4
One of the
is
important things that we would strongly
residents
suggest is
will help create process or policies that directly affect
to any
new services or transformed services. And ways of working,
for example,
can take
ISO
shape with the opinions and insight of
that's
your
great.
residents.
But if you're not, there is no need for you to go off and look or seek for an
this level of engagement is for your actively engaged residents that sit on scrutiny panels,
specific
sit on boards
to your building and your building's nuances.
Now, only a handful of your residents
for example,
will reach this level of engagement across your stock.
To tell everybody that they've
the regulator will want to see how you are
if your building
working with residents on the things that matter most.
So it's really important that we
focus
and
at a level of engagement that makes each tenant comfortable and happy.
Requirements.
So ask yourself, do you provide opportunities at each of the 5 stages I've just mentioned?
More importantly than all
it will be
the
important
other elements,
to demonstrate that a resident can engage with
you
in a way that they want to.
It's got to be able to allow you to manage your building in the way that you need to manage.
The link between engagement and satisfaction is quite clear.
So,
engaged tenants care more about
just as I said that,
and they are
I think
happier,
it's really important that we actually turn around and take you through what your system could look
like. Therefore, it's beneficial
so we believe
for
that your system should include at least a statement of intent, a building safety
and also
what
it is that diminishes
so you can actually clearly set out your roles, your
the 5 dysfunctions of resident engagement.
Your objectives.
Trust
You've got to clearly define
trust is processed
the roles and responsibilities for everybody involved in the organisation.
So that's why you can't just
building safety,
tell people to trust
including residents.
You have to prove it with your actions and by doing what you say you're going to do.
As the legislation that came
engagement and trust go hand in hand, and one cannot exist without the other.
Middle of last month,
there are several reasons
there is a need to make sure that you have all of the appropriate policies, procedures, and arrangements.
They could believe that there's no desire to improve services or performance. Repairs and maintenance may previously have not been carried out effectively. And this can all lead to a breakdown in trust.
Change management
so how do we go about rebuilding
trust?
Within
the actual safety case report.
We should show that you value the input of your residents and promote open engagement and
managing change within the organisation.
Acknowledge queries, concerns, and even complaints.
Now, whilst the government
do so in a timely fashion,
stated that there is a need for a digital system, they have actually stated that actually you've got to be able to transfer and manage
and provide a commentary on what you're being told
and what
you're planning to do and
have some form of digital
this will build confidence in the conversations that you're having with your residents by presenting the information gathered and more importantly the changes made because of it. You encourage greater.
You're going to need to make sure that you are capturing and then reporting mandatory occurrences and have policies and procedures that force you down a particular reporting process,
navigating
especially where a
conflict
safety
and having
occurrence
difficult
occurs, such as a
conversations
fire
acting
or a
upon them,
structural failure
shows your
within the
commitment
building.
to using resident
And
engagement
finally,
to improve your services
the
by placing the
system
resident's
ought to
voice
ensure
at the heart
that
of
you
what
are
you do.
looking and monitoring
Ensure
on a
residents have
management
easy
basis
access to provide feedback
how
at any
you are
time
doing.
by
So you
various
need some
means.
level of reporting,
Acknowledge and
and in
respond to all
addition to that, you
feedback
should be
received.
undertaking regular
And
audits
provide clear,
and reviews.
detailed
And so you need
summarizations
those
to your
processes
residents, for example, on
clearly
a quarterly
identified.
basis. On the
So
feedback
going
received
back to the
and how
technology
you've
then,
acted upon
whilst the
this,
government, as I said,
the
have not
"you said
suggested
we did"
that you need
ethos
to have
is
a
used by a
specific
large number of
management
organisations
or
to do
technology
this.
solution. What they have said
If you want
is
to
that they are
demonstrate a
looking
highly
for a
engaged
digital
environment,
first approach.
allowing the
And
exchange
really,
of
it's all
regular
about
feedback
making
is
sure
paramount.
that the safety
Doing
case
so
information
provides
and the
recognition
systems that you
opportunities,
have
shows commitment to
are able
service
to
growth,
actually ensure
and fosters
that
an
you are able
authentic
to show
community
and
environment,
justify
and it
A, to
boosts
yourself,
resident
but
engagement.
then to the regulator, that you have this sorted.
Can we demonstrate
that you
commitment?
have very clear
When
understanding
you are responsible
of
for
how you can
people's safety,
keep available
a lack of
and
perceived
transfer
commitment can
information
breed
digitally
a culture
to
of
all of the
failure
relevant
and a
parties,
lack of confidence.
and then making sure that your
It could
system
also mean that the service you're
actually
providing
ensures that
comes to a
all of the corrective
standstill,
actions and the
instead of
tasks that
evolving
come
and
out of all of
progressing,
the assessments
which in turn
and
lowers
inspections
enthusiasm and morale
are actually
for
being
both
managed,
tenants and
as well
staff.
as undertaking regular
If residents
inspections,
are revisiting the same
maintenance
discussions,
activities,
raising
mandatory
the same
occurrence,
concerns,
especially in
and
respect of
requesting the
any
same
investigation for
changes,
that,
and seeing a lack of
managing
results,
complaints, the
they will
new
become
guidance and the
increasingly
requirements
disengaged.
for managing complaints
So
are
to demonstrate
pretty long
commitment, you
and
must
pretty complex. So
maintain the
you
required
really
safety
would and
standards
should
in your
use
block.
a technology solution
Involve your
to support
residents in
you through that
decision
process,
making when it comes to
in
matters
how you
relating
manage
to building
change.
safety,
And of course, I think one of the
aligning
areas which
around
often
common
gets
objectives,
missed, it's all about making
and
sure that
prioritise
information and knowledge
clarity.
is
Explain
transferred
priorities,
appropriately.
expectations, and
And
goals.
you know, surveys
Clearly
have suggested
emphasise
that
on
in
the why,
excess of
and
67%
provide defined expectations
of
and
organisations in the
Where
UK are
deadlines are
using
missed,
technology
communicate
to
clearly and
support
show
them
an
in
openness
either
to
their
learn
health
from
and
these
safety or
mistakes,
safety management
and
process.
strive for continuous improvement
So
by
the safety
regularly
management system is
evaluating
going
and
to be
improving
key.
safety and
But
performance.
the next element and the next
And
document that's going to
also,
be key,
quite
and again,
key,
as of
is
yesterday's
finding the
guidance from
silent
the 1st of
audience.
October,
Now, problems,
you need to
concerns,
be
and complaints
preparing a
cannot
safety
be
case
addressed if
report
they are not
that
reported.
summarises the safety
Many
case,
residents
that
may find themselves
identifies the
in
building
the
safety
silent
risks,
category
and
for a
then
number of
explains
reasons.
how the
They
risks
might not
are
feel
being
confident
managed.
to engage. They might
So
not
the
feel they're being
key
reached
element
out
here
to.
then is
They
your
might not have
safety
the tools
case
to reach
report,
out.
but you can't
By
start
providing
your safety
avenues to
case
overcome
report
these barriers,
unless you have
you are
captured and
demonstrating
gathered
confidence
your
in your
safety
commitment
case.
and
Now,
your
the safety case
accountability.
is all of the information
And that
and
leads
all
us
of the
on to,
systems that
do we
you
show that
use
we are
to
accountable?
manage the risk of fire
Similarly
spread
to
and structural
demonstrating
safety in the building.
commitment,
So
you
it's
must
not
also
just
demonstrate
documents, it's the
accountability.
information
Can
that
you
you
clearly
have,
evidence
and it's
how
the
you are ensuring your
systems that
residents'
you are
safety,
using
that
to
you are
manage that
complying with
whole
your
process.
statutory
Now, that
duties and
information could be
responsibilities as the
development-based
principal accountable
information.
person
That
or the
information is
accountable
going to
person?
be information
And is
relating
this
to the more
information
dynamic
easily
side
accessible to
of the
your
management of the
residents?
building, such as
Some ways to
day-to-day
show
maintenance,
accountability to your
as well
residents
as
would be
your
by
building safety
providing
management
regular,
system as well.
accessible updates regarding
Whereas the
building
safety
safety,
case report
the actions you have taken
actually
and
is
are
a
planning to
narrative
take.
document
This
that
could be by
summarises
providing
your safety case
resident-friendly
information.
fire risk
So it's
assessments
really
or
important
the
that
results
you
of
understand
community
what is
inspections or
applicable
surveys.
to your
And where
particular
applicable,
building,
consult
so
and
you can
involve
actually
residents
therefore
in
capture
changes
that
and work to
information,
be
ensure
undertaken.
your systems are fit for purpose,
Ensure residents know
and
how to
then
raise
you
a
can then
query,
capture that
report a
and
concern,
provide
or
a
raise a
narrative
complaint,
report that
and have a
summarises
system
your
in place
safety
to deal
case
with these
information.
accordingly.
I think
And this
what's really
process
important,
must
though,
be widely
is that a safety
promoted.
case report
And
could
where
be
residents
quite
do raise
complicated.
concerns,
Because
identify
initially
risks
you'll
or
have to
submit a
detail
complaint,
within your
have
safety
a
case
clear
report
process in
information
place
relating to your
that
safety
allows you to
management
acknowledge
system.
this,
And that means that you
investigate
need all
and
of your
respond,
safety case
and
information.
where
You're
necessary
going to need to
rectify
ensure that your
issues,
safety case
providing
report
regular and open
constantly
communication.
refers to the risks associated with your
When we bring
assessments.
it up to results,
All of
so
your golden
without
thread will need
results,
to
there
be
is no way to
available.
measure success,
You need to make sure that you
identify
understand
strengths,
how
and
you
also
are
highlight problem
engaging
areas
with
and hidden
residents.
truths.
And also,
Measuring
in addition
results
to
will
that,
help help you review
need to make sure
your
that you
engagement
understand
strategy and
how
determine what
you
is
are going to
important
be
to your residents moving
mandatory
forwards.
occurrences,
And as you'll be
how
using
you're going
different
to be
methods
managing
of engagement,
Now,
you should
most
also
people would
use
stop
various
there.
methods
What we
of
would suggest
measurement.
is that you need to take into account all of the
Having a
information that you've
baseline
got,
will help you
all
measure
of the
the
systems
impact,
that you're using, all
improvement,
of the
and areas for
inspections that
improvement
you're
within your
undertaking.
engagement
All of
strategy.
them
Don't just rely on surveys as a measurement tool. There are various ways to measure engagement.
You are managing the safety of residents within that building.
Look at the responses to some communication that you've sent out, the number of attendees at consultations, the level of involvement in decision making, suggestions made, and input received.
Yourself
any feedback received is a method of measuring engagement.
As well as other accountable persons.
You could see improvement in resident housekeeping and safety awareness, and you can demonstrate that this is your residents being actively engaged and taking on board the discussions that you're having with them.
You should be able to assure
responses to access requests for inspections and surveys,
risks have been very
residents requesting building safety information, and the number of safety inquiries received, and also the number of complaints received.
have put in place appropriate
embrace
mitigation
the good
and management practices
and the bad.
Based
Embrace
upon
all
your
engagement.
assessments.
Don't shy away
they
from
are there
queries,
on an ongoing
concerns,
basis.
and
So
complaints.
it's not just about managing
There
now,
are positive aspects to these that will enable you to build
Only
an
then
engaged
would
relationship
we
with your
suggest
tenants.
that you start thinking about how you would therefore justify your
So
safety
how can we
claims
make resident
to others.
engagement easy?
And those safety claims are all
There
about
are
basically the
some
three
certain
areas.
quick wins
Is the
that
building
we can
been
use.
designed safely? Has the
Digital
building
platforms.
been constructed safely?
By using
And is the building
digital
being managed
platforms,
safely
this
now
provides
and
great
in the
opportunities for residents to freely engage at will,
that's the focus
in their
that
own
we would
time
strongly
and at
recommend
their
that you
own
start
pace.
work on immediately
It can allow
after
the residents
the
the
1st of
opportunity
October, or
to
now
provide
if you haven't
feedback,
started already.
raise queries or concerns,
What we
all
have
of
found
which
though
can be
is
logged
that
and evidenced to
when
the
it comes to
regulator
the
as active
information,
engagement.
a lot of organisations are
Increased
struggling
footfall and clicks on
capturing
the
their
app is
safety
another
case
demonstrable
information
method
and
to
ensuring
show
that
the
their
regulator
systems
that
are in place.
engagement has
Type
increased.
of information hygiene
Regularly
issues
communicate
that we have found,
updates.
for example,
By
are
keeping
missing information.
residents
So that's
regularly
information that
updated,
should be available
you are
but is
promoting
not,
and
such as
enhancing
completion
your relationship,
certificates and
which in turn will promote
development
and enhance
documentation.
engagement.
Misclassified
There is nothing
information,
worse than being
for
told
example,
last minute
or
that
misclassified
something
data
is going
or
to
documents.
happen, and
we
that
find,
could
for
potentially
example,
have
fire
disruptive
strategies
effect
that
on
have
the
been
resident,
provided by clients,
alarm
but actually
testing
they're
or
not.
front door
They're a fire
inspections.
risk assessment or a set
Regular
of procedures
updates will
on how to
help
get out of the
maintain
building.
that sense of being
We're
informed
finding that there's a
and being
huge amount of
involved.
unverified information,
And your regular
documentation,
updates don't
and data.
necessarily have to
Information, for
contain
example, that's been
a great deal
supplied
of
but
information.
not been checked for
If you find
authenticity,
you don't have anything
or even relevance
specific
and
to
accuracy.
update on,
We found, for
you could
example,
remind residents
a
of
sprinkler
the
test
block do's
completion,
and don'ts, or any planned inspections or maintenance work
that
for the
actually
following month.
was undated, unsigned, and actually when we
Educational
looked at it, it was
pieces
for the
also
different
make
building.
great updates.
We're finding
Always
inaccurate
ensure your updates are
information,
communicated in the determined
information
methods
provided for
and
the
are
wrong
as
property,
accessible as
or
practically
works that have
possible.
been undertaken or been completed when actually
Encourage
they have not.
feedback and suggestions.
We're finding that
and make
people
it comfortable
have
for
had
residents
changes
to
to their
provide
building,
feedback
but
and suggestions.
more often than not,
Make it
their
comfortable for them
assessments
to
and their
raise
arrangements and their
queries and concerns
documentation
or
doesn't
even raise
actually
complaints.
reflect
This
the
is
actual
still
change.
engagement,
And
and
then
it
again,
can still be
a lot of
turned into a
organisations are
positive
struggling because they
opportunity.
don't have that
Again, that's
site-specific, that
demonstrable to the
building-specific
regulator.
safety management system.
Community
And
events,
that
if
lack
you
of
have the
safety management
ability and the
system
opportunity,
really does have a major
community
impact
events are
on your
a great
safety
way to
case
get
report.
residents together. And it's an opportunity to have a number of residents together, actively listening and engaging.
From yesterday, we got further guidance.
And finally,
and last month,
make sure
we've got a greater
your
degree
staff
of guidance
and your
now
contractors
on
have the
need
resources,
to prepare
the
and publish
capabilities,
a residence
and the
engagement
confidence
strategy.
to engage.
As I said earlier, your safety case report
So this
relies
brings me on
upon
to
information
the
relating
case
to
study.
this. So you need to be able to
the case study
describe
is
this
about an
process
in-scope block
and how you are
with
engaging
predominantly
with
leaseholders
residents
and some
within
shared
your
owners.
safety case report.
There was
This
absolutely no
isn't just
trust due
about
to historic poor repairs,
with residents. This is
terrible maintenance service, increased service charges, along with an inability to
so the actual resident engagement
or
strategy
sell their properties due to
basically requires the principal accountable person
concerns,
to,
various
as soon as
concerns
reasonably
being
practical,
raised by tenants
prepare
and had
this
been
engagement
ignored.
strategy.
There had been no engagement,
participation
just
in building
snippets of
decisions.
inconsistent
You've then got
and
to
inaccurate
review
information.
that strategy in prescribed times.
All of this had led
and revise
to
it
a
if you
block
consider it
satisfaction
necessary or
score
appropriate
of
to do so.
2 out of 10
And the
for
guidance and
trust,
legislation that's out
engagement,
there at
and
the moment says
communication.
that review
And there had
at
also
least
been
has to be
issues with
undertaken every 2
property
years.
access for safety critical
In
inspections.
prescribed circumstances, you've got to consult with
When we
the
were
residents
appointed,
and other
we
relevant
commenced with
persons
engaging with residents
take their
immediately with a series of
representations into
in-person
account
an online session,
especially when
held
you
at flexible
therefore
times.
update your residence
And
engagement
after every
strategy.
meeting, minutes and
And you've
actions
got
were
to act
submitted
in
to
accordance
every
with the
resident within
strategy. So if
24
you're
hours,
saying that you're going to be
ensuring the
undertaking
residents began to feel
regular
heard.
meetings with
An
clients
action
or
plan was
providing
created for
regular
all the
information
non-building
through
safety
social
related
media,
issues.
for example,
And
then you need
individual
to
contact
ensure
details
and make
within
sure that that's
responsible
actually occurring.
departments were given out.
So the actual residence engagement
This ensured
strategy has
accountability
got to
and
seek
demonstrated
to
to the residents that we
identify
were not
firstly
trying to
how the
avoid them.
residents prefer
And it
to
was
be
also
engaged.
identified during this time that
A lot of
staff
people are
training
saying,
was
well, we're just going to
required
send them
to
this, we're going
provide
to send them
staff
this.
and
We're going to, that
contractors
may
with
not be the
engagement
preferred method.
development training.
Social media
We created a
methods,
series of
setting up,
bespoke
for
packages
example,
to ensure
Instagram
staff had the
accounts,
resources
Facebook
and the
accounts,
confidence to
using
engage with
email,
residents,
etc.,
addressing
may be the
sometimes
preferred
quite
methodology, but it
difficult
may
and
not
fraught
be the
conversations.
preferred methodology for all
The block
residents.
needed intrusive
So
remedial
you
works
need
to be
to
undertaken by
understand
the main
the building's
developer.
demographic
And tenants
in
were
respect
asked
of the
to
residential
join the project team
occupants.
and were invited to attend meetings.
You need to make sure
Although
as
the
well that the
balconies were
information
not
that you
demised
are
to
going to be
tenants,
providing
they
to
were fully
them
involved
is
in
accessible for
decision-making,
all.
having input
And you
in
also need to
concept
make sure
design,
that residents
the
are aware
materials
of their
used,
own
the
obligations
programme
under
of
the Act,
works,
their obligations
and
to
the levels of
not
project
damage the
communication
building,
and
not
methods used.
interfere
And what
with any
became quite
fire
evident
or
was that
structural safety equipment,
residents in
and
the
very
block didn't
importantly,
much care
allow
for
you
the
access
fancy newsletters or the
to the,
tea on
their
Tuesday
particular
events
demised areas.
that the developer was suggesting,
So the
but
strategy
instead
has got
asked
to include
for
information
simple,
about what
consistent,
information
and
you are going to
clear
provide them
updates.
on a proactive
Once works
basis.
commenced, we
You've
held
also then
weekly
got to tell
evening
them what
meetings with the
other
tenants
information,
online,
core safety
and any
information,
actions
it's
that were
called,
raised would be
will be
addressed and
available
closed out
to
in a
them
timely
on
manner.
request.
In a timely manner,
And they can request
and when they
access to that
weren't,
information
a full
whenever they like.
explanation and update was
You've
given
got
in
to
an
actually be able to
open
actually turn around
forum.
and tell them how you will consult
Engagement
with them
and
and how
communication
you will
became
take their
natural,
views into
productive,
consideration.
and
And
importantly,
very importantly,
enjoyable
how
for
you will
both
measure
tenants
and
and
review
staff.
the effectiveness
Residents
of that
reaching
strategy.
out with inquiries or
And the final
concerns were no
two
longer
areas that you
ignored
need
or
to be thinking
avoided,
about in your
and
residence
staff knew
engagement
that they had
strategy
the
is to
relationship
actually
and
ensure that
resources to
residents are
resolve
very
almost
clearly
all of the
aware
issues.
of how they can
This
report
development not
safety
only
concerns
benefited the
and
residents,
safety
but actually also
occurrences,
saw an improvement
and very
in role
importantly,
retention and staff
provide a very
satisfaction.
clear complaints procedure
Tenants
for the
became
residents
involved
to
with
actually follow.
decision making relating to inspections,
I'm very
surveys, and
conscious of the
maintenance
amount of
works within
time
their
you've got
blocks.
left, and I'm conscious that
Decisions
there'll
such
be
as
questions
the time
that
and
you
dates
might
of
want to ask.
works and
So I
inspections,
just want to finish
and,
off
where
then
applicable,
talking
design and
about
colour
the
choice.
building assessment
This saw an
certification process.
increase in
Now, perhaps
access
this is
to
one
apartments
area
during
where
the
we are
next
still
front door
waiting for
entrance,
some
front
more
entrance door
definitive
inspection.
dates,
This
times,
increased from
and requirements.
18% to 90%.
Currently, the understanding is that in order to
As the
apply for your
building was an
building
in-scope
assessment
building,
certificate,
the
which you will
improved
be
engagement
directed
and
to
the
do so
input
by
from
the
residents
regulator,
helped
you've
develop the
got to at
residents'
least provide
engagement
them with
strategy.
3 pieces of information.
All previous
First things
safety
first, your
concerns and complaints were
current
actively
safety
used to
case
demonstrate
report.
engagement.
What I mean
And
by
with the actions
current,
taken to address these
for
issues,
existing
helping
buildings
to
that
increase
perhaps are
tenant
going to be
confidence
well
that their
down the line in
voices
the
would be
tranches,
heard.
perhaps version
A
1
second
of that
satisfaction
particular
review
document
was
is not
undertaken
going to
after
be
6 months.
the most
The
appropriate
score
or
had
most
increased
current
from 2
document
out of
that you
10
need to
to
provide them.
8.5 out
Again,
of 10.
you need to provide the
And the
most current
regulator asked if they
resident
could use the
engagement
methods
strategy,
used at this block
and
as
also provide the
examples of
regulator
best
with
practice.
details of the systems that you're using to report mandatory occurrences. Okay, thank you. So as I said, Jody, when you are directed to do so by the regulator at the beginning of the presentation, we're no longer dealing with theory. This is real. The regulator, and as I always like to say, it's now time to act. Building assessment certificate. First things first, then we want to give you some takeaways. Your certificate, your permission, effectively. So the first thing we would suggest is that you need to embrace now the principal accountable person. When they are directed to do so by the regulator from the process, has got to make that application. It's a statutory requirement anyway. So if it's a statutory requirement, it's out of required, which is going to be that prescribed information. That's one thing that we would certainly straight away say embrace the process. Also, other information that and really move may ask for. The next thing we would suggest is that you should remember that every building is different, by the way, and so is going to be based around a series of what we call tranches. Do not we are not caught up into receiving the traditional stereotypes by the regulator. For example, to apply for that certificate, as Jody said to me a couple of days ago, are the area where we are still waiting social media guidance, and not all old people shy away from it. In fact, on previous guidance, unfortunately, has now been withdrawn. The regulator has suggested that buildings in excess of the older 50 metres, the residents had more than 10 units were going to be social media one, were they? Along with all other. So the next thing we would suggest is be practical, for example, in excess of over 141. Relate your strategy to the practical issues that surround the building. That can change. So that's got to be about originally in their particular here. So resident engagement has got to be about involving of how they are going to call this the right call these areas. For building safety decisions are all about fire and structure. What is very clear as well is that it's not just going to be based on the number of dwellings, or the number or the height of the building on. It's also going to be based on other nuances, though. For example, it's about you have building trust with your residents, and that is going to take time and effort on your particular building. In our experience, so that's the type of nuances that we need to properly, where it's done in a very methodical way, and with the acceptance it's going to currently start to embrace April 2020. The results, but again, from our clients, it's really important have been worth it. That actually those dates don't forget your own staff and. Finally, then, engagement process is a two-way process. We are going to have to both consider your residents, go through this process of applying for this certificate. Have got to feel. As I said, it's going to include a very detailed review of your safety case report, to be able to accept your residents' engagement strategy and be able to manage. And the government have stated very clearly that they expect that at least 70% of the buildings will need. But it is extremely challenging, if not almost. I think what's also very clear to know exactly is that under regulations that were produced literally a couple of weeks ago. Sorry, you've got to get that the regulator will be paying that building, will be charging. The principal accountable person. You've got to review your strategy, and we would suggest that the regulator statutory requirement has been tasked to recover 100% of their costs every 2 years. Now, we don't know what those costs are going to be. Review it on other occasions. If, for example, you've had a previous guidance that's out there, or if you're intending to make a change the safety to the building, for which the regulator works. And finally, within, if you've written down what you intend to do, £166 per hour for their fees for intervention in accordance with your strategy, which basically is the same requirement the regulator is expecting you to do. That is exactly what the regulator is expecting an hour to be able to demonstrate. Expecting, but again, they will be checking to make sure. I think the other element is a lot of people are saying, well, so they're the 9 takeaways that we would suggest. The original you need to think about the original as you go through the process. I have to say, of developing your residents' engagement, at least removed from publication. Now, we wanted to leave you with a few links. A building could take up to 78 hours. At the end of according to the Building Safety Regulated Charge Regulations, fees will be payable within 30 days of request. Resident engagement. So it's really important. And finally, I would imagine that just the regulator is not going to issue a few certificates. Your resident engagement strategy or have been is going to have to be submitted when you are asked to apply. So for us, it's very clear. Building assessment. You need to get this right first time. You need now to the regulator the implementation process 2 teams first time. One of those well-structured, considering your safety case management. And your safety case is going to be looking at your resident engagement and a complete safety your resident engagement strategy. Because if your report has to be sent back to you with questions, scrutiny, that's just additional time and additional cost to yourselves and to the tenants as well. Understand that each therefore needs to be submitted to relate to the specifics. So finally, your building and your can't stress this strongly enough. It is time to We've often heard we are not dealing with theory anymore. Suggest that we'll just have a generic statement that it's not going to happen. We can't just rely upon the fact that we believe next year there's going to be a changing government and therefore a change with the regulator in the process. It's just not going to happen. Finally, I just want to remind you that so if you haven't registered your building yet, please do so. If the regulator before the 1st of October questioning you because they are not comfortable haven't done so with already, your strategy, make sure that you understand and then provide the building safety regulator with your key building information. It's going to cost you money in the long run. You need to therefore go back and very much think about your risk assessments. Happy to take your risk assessments, cover everything that's needed whenever you have are suitable and sufficient. Back to you.
Yeah, thank you very much. That was.
You need to make sure that you are developing.
I'll be honest with you, a slightly scary proposition, mainly because it's so under. It's just not part of the culture of residential living. And I suppose to some extent we're building culture here,
thinking about and
moving away from that arm's length relationship with between resident and landlord, or and the responsibilities often being handled by a third party who may have erratic service levels. But it's a huge shift, really. This is huge in terms of what the expectation and how we do it. There's a few questions have come in, which I'm going to come to in a moment. I suppose to some extent, I just want to clarify this. Obviously, we have a largely built-to-rent audience, but I do not have any sense that there is any exception, whether you're a renter or a permanent occupant of the building. This dynamic is the same for all occupants, regardless of the type of tenure that they have. So even about short lets, I mean, there are companies specializing in short lets. I mean, is it the same dynamic there, or do they just fall into
I would strongly
if they fall into the program consultation, they would just be picked up on that, or if you have a 3-month let or something like that, would that have to be picked up as well?
And from that you will
the short lets are just as important as any
yes, we will send out, we will include,
and I think what we found is
slide, for example,
that by educating the managing agent that was overseeing those short lets and providing them with information and resources that they could then submit to the people on the short lets, it encouraged greater engagement. So they have just the same level of responsibility as does the people residing in the property at that time. They have the same roles and responsibilities as anybody else in the building, and they need to be made aware of those.
It's there for posterity, and people can go
and noted and understood. What's been there. I'm also struck with the difficulty in getting people to participate meaningfully. I mean, we know it's a statutory obligation, but there are statutory obligations on the residents as well that may or may not be aware of.
We've had
practically speaking, I mean, you can host the meetings, you can put the campaigns out and all of that sort of thing, and that's all important and good stuff. But again, I come back to the cultural question. There isn't sort of a culture of an established confidence around these sorts of report backs and dealing with them. How do you stimulate this? I mean, I know you touched on it, but could you, from your experience, what have been the most successful ways of getting the occupants, the residents, to engage fully?
I think there's going to be
for me, it's having that inquisitive nature to find out what's stopping them.
In the regulator,
is it a lack of interest? Is it they don't understand what it is we're trying to engage and speak to them about?
I was going to.
They don't have the resources, and I think once you start asking those questions,
I thought I needed to focus on that.
You start having a better understanding of why you're not necessarily
getting an uptake on your engagement. I think we are going to see a significant amount of additional.
Then you resolve those issues. You find out what your barriers are, and you overcome those barriers.
In the next
few months. It's by no means an overnight success story. The block that I spoke to you about in the case study probably was one of the quicker uptake blocks, and that still took 6 months.
We've seen that, for example, over the last 2 years. Guidance has come out.
Okay, can I just press you on this point? So if the uptake is poor for all sorts of reasons, and we have a question from Diego Landetta, who's making the point of what happens if English is not your first language, but that, whether it be a language barrier or just a can't be bothered barrier, if you can demonstrate to the regulator that you are consistently and regularly attempting to meet, even if the response is poor or lower than you would like, that will get you through the compliance threshold. Is that the case?
Absolutely. It shouldn't be.
We are going to see that.
It shouldn't be your goal.
I think
obviously your goal should be to have as many engaged residents as possible, but the regulator does understand that this is, as you said earlier, very new.
Funds
and it can be quite intimidating for all parties involved.
Well, clearly,
so as long as you can demonstrate that you have made available
approach, and I wouldn't imagine
every
most BTRs are, but
as is reasonably
for example, yes, if they are service charge recoverable,
the residents
then you
have
can recover
various
some of
methods
those.
of opportunity to reach out and engage.
Section,
then
my apologies,
that will
but the Act actually does indicate
Okay, so I mean, there's a lot of questions coming up on this point. The silent, the vocal minority, the silent majority, and that dynamic of who do you listen to? The squeaky gate syndrome and all the rest of it. So, but just to recap on everything that you're saying, and this is applicable. I mean,
depending upon your service charge approach,
long lets, short lets, and in between lets, that everybody is responsible here. So the responsibility is on both sides, both the resident and the management.
May have multiple buildings.
The trick, it seems to me, is to make sure you have a programmed, regular set of engagements, whether it be online or in person or whatever it is, and demonstrate that you do that consistently. And you pointed earlier about embracing the problems or embracing challenges. We did say it's a language problem. Again, once you know there's a problem, you can start to address it. And just the documenting all of that will
you can have a framework,
keep you on the right side of the regulator. It does seem, I think, looking at the questions, I think there's a fearfulness of, oh my goodness, if it's not successful from the beginning, I'm going to be unsuccessful. And you just reassure the audience on that point, if you would.
I'll talk towards the end about future webinars which we have planned. One being around resident engagement strategies. So that will be something we'll build into that.
Best practice was also really emphasising on the fact that
I'm talking about follow-up
this is not
a question of whether there'll be a follow-up session on the changes needed prior to commencing on site and during the stages,
this is
particularly around the changes in
for the long haul. This
design.
is a hard slog.
And
they do.
We were going to be including some of that today, but because of what happened yesterday,
the majority of your residents are probably going to fall in the categories that we spoke about earlier with the levels of engagement. Probably the 1 or 2 categories.
At some stage, yes, we are going to be including
a small minority
that, but very
are going
importantly,
to sit
focusing
actively engaged and
on actually going through the various gateways, gateway
and you
1,
do have to be mindful
gateway 3,
those people don't necessarily
making sure
speak
that
for everybody in
as
your block.
principal accountable persons,
so whilst you can listen
you are,
to the
engaging
lived
with the right
experience
people,
and the issues that they're raising, being mindful that you also
information transfer
have a large majority
at all of those
people
stages,
sitting in the background
working with principal designers and principal contractors,
and the regulator does appreciate that.
Another question.
So a couple of questions coming in now on the ratio or the amount of engagement. So if you had I think one of your examples was, I can't remember, sort of just under 100 homes, and then there's a question here on starting a portfolio of 2,500, which would include everybody from students, professionals, social residents, asylum seekers, as well as build to rent, I guess. How do you say I should be doing this every 6 months or every 3? How do you determine the level of engagement according to the scale of development? I mean, your thoughts on that?
On your fire risk assessment and your assessments.
The level of engagement needs to be determined on a block by block basis.
That's the first thing. The second element is,
and I do feel that this might be where
of fire safety
some people will fall down. This isn't a generic engagement strategy across your business.
That you are able to actually include
this is on a block by block basis,
within
and
your
you will
safety
have
case
some
report.
blocks
That you have issues, if you have issues, that they are being dealt with
on a much
quickly.
more regular basis.
I think the terminology
you'll have some blocks that you find
terminology
don't require as much information and not interested in as much information, and the engagement happens while still consistent. Not
so we
as
shouldn't
regularly.
be waiting 6 months down the line if for example, that
okay, so it's a block by block thing, and I just want to kind of expand this a little bit, because the regulation requires what it requires.
Any timelines.
So how do we do this? Well, we do this variously, but it means that the site team, and there's an anonymous question coming on, just to point to, in their experience, it seems to be that once you start engaging, the response is often more positive, even if it's slow, but more positive than perhaps one would expect.
Great, thank you.
But that then points a question to the site team and the quality of that site team and the ability of that site team to really kind of oxygenate this process. I certainly know from build to rent operators, the operating costs are high, the margins are low, and staff are stretched. So this does seem to put another burden on the industry. It's going to, I won't say it's going to be the most expensive thing to do, but it's obviously going to come at a cost.
They were suggesting that something
is the regulator aware of this? Are they? I know the importance of this, so I'm not trying to in any way minimize the importance of doing this. But has thought been given to how the cost of this could be managed?
in respect of the fact that they
I've
initially
not had
thought
discussions
that the
personally
whole
with the regulator
impact
with
on
regards
residents
to
was going to
what
be
this
around
is
about
going to cost
£190
individual
per year
businesses.
for residents. Their
In terms of
impact
engagement, there
assessment and the costs
certainly are
included within that,
some quick
which
wins
we have to accept
that are not expensive.
based upon
and also,
an estimate of the numbers of
you've
people
raised
and
a
an
really
estimate
valid
of the
point.
costs.
The site team and the
we
staff that
believe,
you have on site must have the
underpriced.
confidence and the resource to be able
safety
to
case report,
undertake
as you
this
can see, it's a
engagement.
complex document. It isn't
And
just
not
about
be
fire
overwhelmed
safety,
if there all of a
structural
sudden is
safety
a
as
large
well.
uptake
Fire
and increase
engineers
in
are
engagement
not structural engineers. Therefore, you can't just have one person write your safety case report. We've been discussing, in some instances, cost with the regulator, and the regulator's turned around and said that the most important thing for them is the outcome.
As to whom the front
and yes, they do accept that things are going to cost.
Who is responsible for arranging to have these checked?
But it's got to be proportional. Well, that's actually very simple. The Act, the Fire Safety England regulations to the building, made it specific to the residents, clear, but proportional. It is the responsible person. So the person in control of the premises is responsible for having those. So as Jody was saying there about now, the question everything goes on from reasonably do is if, for example, that's the most important thing that they're actually looking for here. What is a responsible person goes out and checks the fire doors, reasonable, and we find something wrong particular on a door where. So I think that's the most important part. Costs are always going to be a problem. Costs are then again going to be considered. But at the end of the day, it is a system whereby you can advise them, and so they are expecting that something is done. So it's very simple. All depends upon responsible person. And I think you hit on a really important point right at the very beginning of your question. To arrange to have these checks, a huge all reasonable endeavours. The whole concept of building safety, once they've had them checked, has got to be outcome based. And it's the person who's and we have responsibility for the door about to actually have them change. That's exactly what Dame Judith said in her report.
Thank you.
We are indifferent. We were indifferent.
Unless there's anything
we were
you wanted to say in summary, David.
We cannot. No, again, just to reiterate, this is not theory anymore. So you're right. Culture has talking about theory perhaps for 2 to 3 years now. As well, we now need to act. And
it's indeed, and it's unfortunately cultural change is a bit of a slow process. I want to come back just to your point on proportionality. I think that that's an important word to reasonableness and proportionality are important words to insert into conversations around the building safety. About the consultation aspects of the building safety, some of the technical stuff has a different criteria. That proportionality, I guess, will be tested variously, and
just to reiterate,
perhaps we'll get to some sort of understanding of what that might be.
That the UKAA is running.
I guess the regulator, we have to suck it and see. There's no sense of this until we really get into it and we get some evaluations of it by the regulator. Some deemed to be good and some deemed to be bad. But is there anything you would add to proportionality that would help build? This is going to come down to building managers and the teams that back that. I mean, I see a level of risk for our industry that we do not have the people, and we don't have the career paths mapped out, or the recruitment drives to attract people into our industry. I'm just talking about build to rent rather than the whole residential real estate, to do this. So that poor proportionality, we're going to have to build a workforce here, and that's going to take time. Any thoughts on that?
So 2nd November is a really unique opportunity to hear directly from the building safety regulator.
Yes, it will take time. I think it's understood that it will take time. I think it's understood that this aspect of the safety case report, this element to it, is a huge change.
In build to rent, and that's an in-person evening.
Slow and steady wins the race. I think once you do what we did discover and what we have realised, especially over the last 2 years where I've been actively involved in building safety engagement, is that the more comfortable your staff are and the better equipped they are to deal with these issues and these concerns, the better staff retention you have.
Developer and contractor views, as well as
a long way to go on this one, I have to say. I want to shift this. Sorry, David.
And thank you, David.
I was going to turn around and say it's a saying that I always think of, because when I was dealing with law,
and to reiterate,
I remember my lecturer always saying, think about what the man on the Clapham omnibus would do. And then you're starting to think about this on a proportional basis.
we've got some numbers coming in there. So, and once again,
sending
thanks
out a
for
survey,
joining,
sending out a letter
us this morning.
That's a reasonable thing
and we're
to
going
do.
to be talking about
asking
a subject
people what
which
it
is
is
real
or how
interest
they would like to be engaged.
And
that's a reasonable
right
thing
now,
to do.
as we'll hear,
not doing it
on the area of the Building
I would
Safety
then
Act
find
and
that
its
very
implementation.
difficult to justify to the
And
regulator.
what we'll hear from
no, indeed, that man on the Clapham omnibus has had to
just
has
how
a huge to-do list over the years, hasn't he? I'd like to just spread this, because a few minutes left, to a wider thing. If we look at single-family housing, which is certainly in built-to-rent land, it's going to become a huge part of our sector, and will be held by a number of institutional investors and other larger operators. Houses have a different safety regime. Is there any differences about how this should be approached? Are there exclusions? What would you say to the single-family housing world?
And Society of Fire Protection
I
Engineers.
think, having worked for a charitable housing association, the majority of our household
everyone who's on the
criteria,
call, and
it's how you approach
questions,
and discuss the educational pieces with these households.
We'll go through those towards the end and answer as many as
safety, their safety is your priority.
That's enough from me. Over to David.
And it's how you get that across to them.
Hear what we have to say.
By providing them with educational pieces so that they too can be responsible for their own safety and that of their neighbours within the block.
Good morning, everybody.
Helps develop this
my name is David
engagement,
Hills.
this community.
I'm Senior Director at ARC.
Okay, so I suppose my question was really more around so if you look at institutional landlords, they will own big, well, there may not be a big block in the sense of a block of flats, but big blocks of single houses in more of a housing estate perspective, and it puts them into a category which is been responsible for multiple homes in houses. Does that have a bearing?
I want to move on to the other key areas.
Is there any additionality or not for the way that should be handled?
Fire spread and structural safety.
So a different type of building structure, but still great risk to a managed portfolio. I suppose
talk about safety case and safety case report. Residents' engagement.
I don't think they should
then finish on
the
building assessment certification.
So it's a single, no different. I suppose the genesis of my question is that the safety dimensions are different. But no, the universal application of this now is very, very, very
We've been talking about. I think if we're going to change culture, Safety Act, Brendan, for many years now. Needed. But whilst there is a statutory duty to deal with this, seen in respect of high risk in the last blocks, in the last month, for example, we had 5 pieces of secondary legislation. I think if we're going to change culture, building safety and industry, they were introduced and then placed on the statute. I think it would be this month, as of this morning, to think that we could just apply this to these higher risk buildings. So I think it's very high risk buildings that are potentially going to change not theory time. This is now, and they may come down to a lower level. I think so. Just it is a moving that this is going to move above 18 meters or 7 stories. Yesterday, 20-30 years September, the government I think would be issued. So I think if we're going to change the guidance, we've got to change the way that we're guidance documents and think about resident engagement that are aimed across the board, accountable persons and principal accountable persons.
Yeah, I think that's very accurate. And it seems to me one of the things that we don't market about our homes, particularly in blocks, is that they are safe and secure. I mean, we talk about lifestyle options and lots of amenity and all that kind of stuff, and that's
Building Safety Act.
But actually, marketing a property has been safe and secure because it's been built well, got it right first time, and managed well. Has got to now be a significant consumer opportunity, given the regulations and the statutory requirements that are out there. So culture is coming, I guess. At least it never sits still. I think we have.
Today, I want to focus on.
We have no more time. There's
purely on the basis is that's where.
Lots of comments coming in, lack of awareness. So your points on education, I think, are very, very well made. I think to the audience, if there's nothing more from the panel, this video will be available on the UKAA website, and it's part of our purpose is to educate and to share the information from experts, so we can all get on with meeting these obligations and doing them well. And increasingly, I see in our industry and from investors, there's a real shift in their thinking to get it right first time. And they're tired of the kind of having to play catch up or go back, and that's a real shift in the in the mood from the investors, the world, that getting it right first time and paying for it to be got right first time is increasingly now on their minds. So I'd like to thank you, David and Jody, for your contribution today, and another huge area demystified for the industry and for our audience. And we look forward to the final segment of this, which will be at conference on the 2nd of November. So please sign up and get your tickets for that. It's going to be a good show. Details are all on the UKAA website. And without any further ado, I bid you all farewell and wish you all a good day. Thank you.
The ability to register the high-risk building.